Alright, how's it going, everybody? My name is Gareth from SimpleStudios, and we're going to be starting a new series. I don't really know what to call it yet, but essentially what's going to happen is I'm going to be showing you guys what goes on in my head when I make a new game for my studio, SimpleStudios. Now, SimpleStudios is an awesome game studio that makes small games anyone can work on. Now, with the shameless plug aside, let's dive into what we're going to be covering in this episode. So right here we have our super detailed plan, and let me break it down for you. First of all, we are going to make a game. This is something that I think everyone in the world should do at least once. Next, we're going to make it function. This is also what you should do if you're making a game. You know, some people don't do that, but it's okay. That's what we're going to be doing in this series, and I'm not a very good programmer, so I might miss this step as well. And finally, don't add bugs. Now, a lot of developers really like to add bugs in their games, and Bethesda is an amazing example. They love adding bugs. In fact, their entire game is a bug, I'm convinced. But in this series, we're going to try and add as few bugs as possible because we want the gaming experience to be as intended as possible. We can't have, all these weird issues happening. Next, we're going to be tackling what we're going to do in the video. So here we have a bunch of scripts. This is all just pre-production stuff. This is stuff that the game needs on the back end to function, and then later on in the series, we'll get into cool stuff like items, enemies, bosses, maybe some new player characters. I don't really know yet, but today we're going to be making a health script. If it has health, then it lives. Otherwise, it's dead. The game manager keeps track of the player and the enemies. Wave manager spawns enemies at some point. Character controller, typical 2D top-down WASD movement. UI, if the player takes damage, it affects a health bar or whatever. A game over. If the player dies, then a pop-up comes up, and then the enemy controller. It will read the position from the game manager, which has access to the player's position, and move towards them. And actually, really quick, let me draw out the project. So this project is a framework of a game series that I like to call the Gladiator series. And basically you are stuck in this area, you can't get out, here's you right in the middle, and there's enemies all around you. They always know where you are, and they will always try to come and kill you. In fact, they will probably kill you quite a lot, because this game will be very difficult. But if you manage to kill all the enemies in a wave, then you get a choice of 3 items at the end of the wave, and you get an item. And over time, the enemies will get tougher, but so will you. So now that we have the project fully explained, we're going to dive into what things we're going to be making for the project to interact with. First up, we're going to have a basic enemy. It's going to move towards the player and deal damage to the player if it hits, and then finally the player themselves. Nothing too insane just yet, because like I said, mainly we're just setting up stuff in this episode, and then in future episodes we're going to do more of the cool stuff. And finally, tools. What are we going to need? Because if you guys want to follow along, which I think you really should, because this is a great learning experience if you're starting out, or if you're just looking to expand your skill set, like me. But you will need ChatGPT. If you can actually program, good on you. Use your brain. You will also need GIMP. This isn't actually required, but I think it's a very good tool. MS Paint, this is a maybe, but I do think that MS Paint is another very good tool, and if you have it, you should use it. And finally, creativity. And funnily enough, creativity is the sponsor of this video today. I'm broke and don't have any actual sponsors, so I made this one up myself. I think everyone should take a shot at being creative. Even if there are people who are more creative than you, unlike weightlifting, unlike sports, unlike anything else really, creativity is entirely subjective. What someone likes, another person might dislike, and whatever someone dislikes, another person might like. So, no matter how few people like your idea, as long as you're making a positive impact on at least one person's day, I think it's worth it to go out there, test yourself, and make something that at least someone can love. Oh, and also good music. You're gonna need some good music too. Now, I obviously have the best music taste out of everyone, so if you guys want my playlist, I will send that over. And yeah, let's get into it. So first up, we have our super awesome project here. It's our Unity project. I basically just made this 5 minutes before recording. So first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna make some folders. Alright, so we have our folders for now. I'm probably missing a couple, but oh well, boo-hoo. And now we're going to make the arena itself. Alright, and now we're going to make a player and an enemy object. Alright, now real quick, a couple things that you may have picked up. We added a box collider and a rigid body both to our player and our enemy. This is because our player and enemies need to collide, and in order to do that, they need a rigid body to move around, and a box collider so that when they collide, something happens. And we're just going to make our player green, just why not, and then we're going to make our enemy a nice red. Okay. And now we're going to go into our scripts folder, and we're going to refer to our plan again really quick, and we're going to see what we're going to do first. So it looks like health script. Okay, very good. And yeah, I'll see you guys back when I finish the health script. Alrighty, so now that we have our little script here, we're going to break things down a little. Actually, let me zoom in so you guys can see this a little better. Okay, there we go. So max health. This is the maximum health of the character, and then current health is the current health of whatever it is. When it starts, we want to set current health equal to max health because when the thing spawns, it has full health. So just write that down there. And then next, we want to always be checking if current health is less than or equal to 0. If it is, then kill it because it has no more health. Whoops. And then here we just have a couple sample methods of taking damage and healing. We probably aren't going to do anything with this in this episode, but eventually we will be having the character and enemies take damage, as well as being healed, so we'll just add those in there for now. And yeah, next we're going to adjust our plan, saying that we completed this. So now we need a game manager, and the game manager is going to keep track of the player's position, and we'll also keep track of enemies, so we'll do that right now. Alrighty, and we're back. So we're going to break down the script really quick. So the game manager finds the player, as long as it's tagged with the player. See right here. And this is so that all of the enemies can figure out where the player is. That's pretty much it. And then here we have a public bool called game over, which is set to false initially, but in the health component for actually what we're going to do is we're going to make two health components, one for the player, one for the enemy, and then the player health component, which is this one right here, it will have a call that triggers the game over method right here. And for now, it's just going to print a debug saying you lose, but eventually we will have a pop-up that says you suck or whatever. And yeah, that's basically it. So now that we have, actually, we're going to do that now. Alrighty, so after copy and pasting the player health script and making a couple small adjustments, essentially we just got rid of the what's it called? The death function, and we just replaced it with it just gets destroyed. And now what we're going to do is we're going to make a method so that the enemy can actually track the player's position and then follow them constantly. So we will do that now. Alrighty, we are back with the enemy controller now. So I realized that earlier when we were making the game manager, I wasn't really thinking 100%, and this line is basically useless. Because to me it makes a lot more sense if the enemies just find the player themselves and move towards them. But anyway, that's what we're doing. And we're going to move on to the player controller now. And like I said in the beginning, it's just a WASD top-down thing, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Alrighty, so here we are with the player controller. Essentially what's going on is it's looking for the rigid body. Once it finds it, it lets us move, basically. And then here we're doing something a little fancy. We're actually just going to use Unity's vertical and horizontal axis, because those are, the horizontal axis is linked to the keys A and D and the left and right arrow key, and the vertical axis is linked to the W and S key as well as the up and down arrow key. So essentially we have made a character controller that works with both WASD but also arrow key inputs. And then here's just some logic where if we stop holding any of the arrow keys, then we stop moving. If it works, I don't know, but that's what we're going to find out. And we're going to hop into our first test here. We're first going to make just an empty object. Call it Game Manager, add the Game Manager component to it. Now, theoretically, the Game Manager actually just knows where the player is off the bat because of the logic we added in, but we'll see if that works. Alrighty, so here we are with the first test, and it has broken. Oh. So here's why it broke, is even though everything else was set up correctly, what we didn't do is assign the player tag. So I think that was the issue there. We'll see. No, it was not. Okay, well, let's pause and take a look. What's going on here? Okay, so the Game Manager has found the player. No rigid body attached to the player. What? Huh. Interesting. Well, for some reason it's saying that there's no rigid body, even though I could have sworn we added a rigid body or two on our player and enemies, so let's take a look at that. What's going on? Oh, that's why. Because it's using rigid body as in like a 3D rigid body, not a 2D rigid body. That makes sense. Okay, no worries. And then we just have to change these to vector 2. I might actually, that's going to say vector 3. And then here we got to change it to vector 2. Okay, now this should work. Let's try again. Alright, perfect. There we go. So our player doesn't move, unfortunately. But the enemy does move. It knows where we are. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to drag the enemy way over here, and we're going to try and give ourselves some time to move. What the hell? Okay. So moving left and right is fine. But up and down, not so much. So let's take a look at that. Why is that happening? Alrighty. So as you probably saw in that little test there, we fixed it somehow. I don't really know what was fixed, but anyway. So that is pretty much the Game Manager crossed off. And that's also the enemy controller crossed off. We also finished both the basic enemy and the character. So we'll cross these off as well. Yep. Okay. Now let's dig into the. Oh yeah, we also got the character controller, so we'll get rid of that. Now let's think a little bit. I think we're gonna dive into the Wave Manager next. So we'll do that right now. Alrighty, and we are back with the Wave Manager. Admittedly, this needs a lot of improvements, but it's what we got right now. So first up, the Wave serialized field. Let's break it down. Essentially, this is a list of data that lets us set a certain amount of enemies with a certain amount of enemy amounts. So this lets us basically custom make waves. Here it's, and then this is a list of positions called spawn points that are going to be around the arena, and whenever a new wave happens, enemies spawn from random spawn points just to keep the game fresh. There's a delay in here so that when the game runs, we have 2.5 seconds of a grace period before we get blasted with enemies. And then here's a timer so that when the game starts, the timer actually counts down to 0. And then here we have a wave count, which will help us determine which wave to spawn. Whenever the delay reaches 0, wave count increases by 1. Now we're probably going to encounter a bug where the wave counter constantly increases because there is no logic to reset the timer, but we will see. But theoretically, here's what will happen. The game will start, the delay will hit 0, wave count will increase to 1, and the first wave will spawn because the wave value will be 1, which matches the wave count. And right here, it's just the logic for the timer, and then for the start wave, it's mainly just figure out which wave we need to spawn, and then spawn those enemies at random locations. So let's set this up. Alright, so I'm actually very surprised that this functions. I thought it was going to break immediately, but now let's check if my theory is correct. Does the wave count constantly increase? Yes, it does. But it's not as fast as I thought, so that's good. And this part is admittedly a little bit more complex, and actually checking to see if all the enemies have been destroyed. If they have, then then it increases wave count again. That's going to take a lot longer, and we're not going to tackle it in this episode. We'll do it some other time. So here we go. We can cross the wave manager right off. Get rid of that. And now we have to make UI and the game over. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a thing in GIMP. We're going to make this 250 by 100. That's probably, yeah, whatever. I don't really care. And we're going to make our health bar. So, let's, I don't really care about the symmetry. Whoops. Try that again. Okay. There we go. And we'll get this in here. Put this underneath that, and we'll make it green, I think. Actually, no. What we're going to do is we're going to make a red version, and then when we lose health, the red version will show, and the green version will not. So now let's just color this in here. Whoops. Oh, well. Yeah, we're going to go a little bit out of the lines, and yeah, this does look like crap, but this will fit the aesthetic of the game, and that's not just cope, that's truth, I think. Anyway, let's keep moving. Yeah. We're going to speed this up a little bit. Alright, good enough. Alrighty, so now we have the player health UI thing. Basically what this does is it takes the player health, sorry, and it takes a look at the current health and max health, and then divides it. Divides it by current health by max health. So if max health is 100 and current health is 50, it will divide 50 by 100 to get 0.5, which then gives it a percentage of 0.5. And then what it does is it takes the full bar here, this green thing, and it sets the fill amount to that percentage. So if we have 50% health, then it will set the bar to 0.5, and that's what it is. And theoretically this functions, but if not, then, well, we've got some work to do. So let's test it out here. Okay, there we go. So it resets just fine, and then, alright, nice. Yep. And then, yep, alright, awesome. So there's the debug showing that we lose. We lost quite a bit there. And really quick, before we dive into anything else, I'll show you what I did with the enemy controller. So what we did is we added a damage value right here, and then we also added a method where it deals damage if it collides with the player. So here we go right here. Basically it says that if we collide with the player, then they take damage, and if you remember from earlier, the player controller has, or no, sorry, the player health has a take damage thing where it subtracts the incoming damage from current health and figures out how much health it has left. And that's what it does. Now later on we will add things like an invincibility period, so that when the player gets hit they have 0.25 seconds to move around and be invincible. The health bar and screen will shake, but that will all be for later videos. Right now we're just setting up the basics. And we're going to round this video off, whoops, by crossing off the UI. Whoops, that's the wrong color. By crossing off the UI and taking a look at the game over script. So, like I said before, what this is going to do is we're going to make a pop-up up here when game over is active, and that will be it. Alrighty, and here we are with the test. We made the script there. Just try and kill ourselves really quick. Alright, awesome. There we go. It functions. That's good enough for today. Thank you all very much for joining me, and I hope that this was at least a little bit informative. And if not, hopefully you found it enjoyable. Thank you very much.